Dewey also. He tipped Jelly off that they were coming to arrest him. So Jelly took a plane to Uruguay, and after a few months he crept back to Europe and tried to get some money out of one of those numbered Swiss bank accounts. The Swiss arrested him. They recognized him, and they put him in one of their top security prisons. Now, what I find fascinating about this, I've done a lot of travel in Europe. Everybody in Europe will tell you the Swiss have the most incorruptible police in the whole continent of Europe. Yet they only held Jelly for 48 hours. Within 48 hours, he was out of that maximum security prison and on another plane back to Uruguay, a mystery which has never been explained. When I was in Geneva, which is where the prison was, I suggested they should put over the door of the prison the three monkeys with the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and the motto, Ficken Sie nicht mit Pay Due, which being translated in English is don't screw around with the Freemasons. No, don't screw around with the Italian Freemasons, anyway, not nowadays.
The Freemason connection is interesting because it's also there in sort of your theme conspiracy, which is the Illuminati.
After 30 years approximately of researching this, I have never found any reason to believe in a Freemasonic conspiracy. But I do believe that, as I quoted Casanova, Freemasonry, being a secret society, has been used for conspiratorial purposes at times, like the Jelly case and the Adam Weishaupt case, which so many right-wingers in this country have never forgotten. Adam Weishaupt died over 200 years ago, but he had a secret society within Freemasonry called the Illuminati, which seems to, as far as you can judge from the more reliable historians, was devoted to plotting to institute in Europe the kind of democracy that was instituted in this country by the Constitution. According to the right wing, it wasn't that simple. What he really wanted to do was establish a socialist dictatorship with himself as dictator. And after 200 years, it's pretty hard to get through all the controversy. Thomas Jefferson called Weishaupt an enthusiastic philanthropist. But that's misleading, because enthusiastic in the 18th century meant pretty much what bonkers means today, a half-crazy philanthropist. Adam Weishaupt formed the secret society within Freemasonry, which was almost certainly plotting to overthrow monarchy and institute democracy, and maybe socialism, maybe anarchism, some think, and was also very seriously devoted to overthrowing the Vatican.
And how far did he get with this?
Not very far as I can figure out, but a lot of right-wing conspiracy buffs believe the Illuminati took over the banking system of Europe and then took over the banking system of America, and they now run the whole world.
So it's so successful, they're still around.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it, if there was one group running the whole world, things would make more sense. I believe there's at least at minimum 2 conspiracies, and probably as many as 24 at any given time.
You know, it often seems that you're, in a way, satirizing the whole field of conspiracy theory.
Oh, very definitely, but I satirize everything. You know, William Burroughs was one of my favorite writers. In 2 of his books, he has a couplet up front without giving the source. And I met him so many times, I never remembered while talking to him to ask, did you write that yourself, or where did you get it from? The couplet is, lesser kings the name of party know. Where I come in, I kill both friend and foe. And I think that's the motto of every true satirist. You shouldn't play favorites. I satirize my own ideas as much as I satirize anybody else's ideas. I believe it's unsafe to be too sure of yourself, so every one of my books turns around and satirizes itself before it's over. After I get through demolishing everybody else's, I demolish my own.
Have you ever written a book that was fully self-satirical from beginning to end?
In some sense, they all are, but I can't think of one in particular.
So you're not picking on the conspiracy theorists in specific?
I think a lot of conspiracy theorists, besides the ones who think I'm a CIA disinformation agent, a lot of conspiracy theorists like my works. They just want to correct me on a few minor points that I haven't gotten right yet. I think I've been much harder on Christian fundamentalists than I've been on conspiracy theorists. And the funniest thing of all, I wrote one book satirizing PSYCOP, the Committee for Non-Scientific Non-Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Just one book out of all the books I've written. They still hate me for that, and they still think of me as their principal enemy. They are very sensitive, very, very defensive and very paranoid. They have the biggest conspiracy theory of all, which is that almost all the scientific research on so-called psychic phenomenon for the last 100 years at thousands of universities all over the world, it's all a conspiracy of wishful thinkers who are deliberately distorting all their evidence. And they know this because they don't do any experiments themselves, so they can tell the truth without having to get messed up by confusing data like the psychic investigators
They
do.
just already know it's wrong.
Yeah, they know it's wrong, so they don't have to investigate. That is the most enormous and hilarious conspiracy theory around, especially if you start reading some of the classic papers on parapsychology, which none of them have ever read. You can tell from their writing. They never read The Enemy because that might corrupt them.
What's the payoff for being a sort of one-sided conspiracy theorist?
Payoff is that you belong to the elite that knows the truth, and you feel superior to all the idiots who haven't figured it out yet. I think that's the real kick in the Jehovah's Witnesses. I once did an article about the Jehovah's Witnesses for a news magazine, and I went around with 2 Jehovah's Witnesses from door to door as they knocked on the door and tried to get in to sell their line. Most people slammed the door in their face, but they're infinitely patient because they're doing the Lord's work. So I go to the next door, and 1 out of 6 will leave the door open for a little while and talk to them for a short time. About 1 out of 20 will let them in and seriously listen to their arguments. And I watched all this, and then afterwards we had lunch together. I did a whole morning with them, and I got asking them about some of their crazy doctrines, and I saw how much it meant to them that they wouldn't take blood transfusions for their children, and they'd rather let their children die. That seems monstrous and insane to most of us, but to them that makes them superior to the rest of us because we're too dumb to see how evil blood transfusions are. They're better than us because they can see it and we can't. And that's why people believe a lot of crazy things. It makes them feel superior to the sane people who can't see it the way they see it. It's like Sartre again, the anti-Semite and the Jew. Anti-Semitism gives you a tremendous psychological advantage because almost everybody you meet disagrees with you and tries to straighten you out. And you can feel superior to them because you know the truth and they don't.
So a psychological power edge.
Yeah, well, it's also very close to what Leary said about emotional politics. The most